Hi, I'm Thilo, and this is Thilo's Theology Service.
So I make some theology videos, and this was one subject that I've really wanted to do a video about. And I gave a talk recently on the subject, and I thought that would be good for a video. But when I do a video, I don't do as well as when I'm talking to people, when I'm just looking at a camera. So I figured this would be an ideal time. And so what we're going to discuss is form and substance. Form is the outward thing that you see, that you interact with, but the substance is the meaning underneath it. And like we were just talking about, like when two men shake hands, what you see is just, the shaking of the hands, that's the form, but there's a substance underneath it of a warm greeting, an extension of strength, an acceptance of one another. There are meanings underneath. And when somebody has grown up, particularly, not just, I notice this in the Coptic world, but when somebody has grown up in a religion that's been in their family for generations, what you learn are the forms. So you learn the hymns, you learn the responses in Coptic, you learn the rubrics, the practices, you learn the rules, the fasting rules and the fasting days, but there seems to be a great lack of understanding of the substance underneath it. Why are we doing this, and what does it all mean? I noticed since I became a subdeacon, there are things that, I'm paying attention to what's going on. I'm looking at the liturgy book, and I'm, noticing. And I notice, when the deacon goes around the altar 3 times with the priest, there are prayers the deacon's supposed to pray. And they're in the liturgy book. And I was told, no, you're supposed to be praying those prayers. Okay, great. And so I memorized them. But it's like, pray for the peace of the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church of God. But I'm saying that silently. So who am I talking to? If it's silent, am I telling God to pray for the church? Who am I talking to? And so I found out, this actually was supposed to be an audible prayer. The substance of the subdeacon role primarily is to give commands to the people. That's, if you look at what a subdeacon, what his responses are, they're commands. They're telling the people to do something. And that's what those were to be telling the people to pray for the church, to pray for the patriarch, and to pray for our assemblies. But since it's silent, I can't command the people silently. So because the substance matters, I altered it to now I'm silently saying, Lord, bless your one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. Lord, bless your high priest, Pope Abba. Lord, bless these assemblies. You see what I'm saying? So I'm making the substance of what I'm doing, I'm altering the form a little bit to match that substance. When you see deacons, perhaps a subdeacon might be going, well, what is he doing and what is he saying? He's saying stand up to for prayer. But who's he saying that to? Well, he's telling the people to stand up for prayer, right? I mean, isn't that what he's supposed to be doing? Well, how are you telling somebody in the back of the room, no, you raise your voice so that person can hear you. This is the job. You're not up there to be, Freddie Mercury, showing off your awesome voice and singing beautifully. That's not the primary function of the job. The primary function is commanding the people and telling them, giving them instruction on what to do next. So here again, I'm talking about there's the form and the substance. When we understand the substance, we can get the form right. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about forms that don't match our substance. So in order to understand the substance of our faith, I have to start at the foundational ground level. And then once we understand the whole meaning of our religion, now we can start to see how those forms tie back in and what they mean as part of the expression of that substance. And so I'll start with the framework where we can rewind back to the beginning. So God creates man. He creates man with a order to his being. A man, whether a person will describe man as body and spirit or body, soul, and spirit, nonetheless, there are aspects to man that are unified in one being, but there are various attributes to the aspects of that man that he created. And so the way man was originally created, the higher part of the man was the part that deliberates and makes decisions, the will, the intellect that chooses. And this sits at the top. And then is the soul, the sensing, the part that's connecting and feeling and sensing from others. And there's the body, which is the vehicle by which he interacts with the physical reality and the world around him. And this is the proper order of being. So you got the body that's interacting and connecting with the physical world, the soul that's sensing and receiving, and you've got the highest deliberative aspect, the will, sitting at the top, that's choosing and deciding the direction of the whole being and what that being will do. So this is how man was created to be. And man is created now to worship God in and through creation. So all of creation speaks of God, and it reveals something about the nature and character of God. And so man, through creation, is to worship God, and with creation, use creation as a means to worship God, as a vehicle to worship God. And man has one thing that he's told not to eat. And if you eat that, what you're doing is you're communing with the creation. Instead of communing with God through the creation, you're now directly communing with the creation. And what is that word that we have for when you're communing with a created thing? It's idolatry. That's when you take the created thing and it becomes the object of your worship instead of worshiping God through and with the created thing. And so in man engaging in this unholy communion with the creation, and the creation being used out of its proper place and order, now man gets completely corrupted and he becomes disordered in his being, in his very state of being. And so now let's take a look at man. The flesh is ruling, the passions, the hungers, the appetites. They take this top place of making their demands, and the soul and sensibilities are completely distorted in how they are receiving. And the will, the decisive, the intellectual aspect falls to the bottom. And so now we have, out of the whole Bible, there's one verse that torments me the most. And it's the one where Jesus says, "By patience possess your souls," because I don't possess my soul. It gets blown around like a leaf in the wind. Think of the last time really bad news came to you. how your soul was just thrown into disruption, into despair, into chaos. Think about the hunger and the appetites that demand and control us. Think about the last time you heard really great news when it was time to go to church. And now you can't get your mind on God and on prayer because you're thinking about whatever that really great thing is. So now I have a problem because of my disordered state of being. I don't have the control and the ability to select this is what's best and then direct my being in that way.
Let me know when I can.
Go ahead.
So, I always like making sure that we're connecting with the content. So, an example perfect example, too, of something I know we've all experienced. When he's talking about, now the body is making all the decisions, and then the soul's kind of stuck in the middle, like being subject to the body. And then the spirit, the mindfulness, the thoughtfulness, the nous is down here, in this reverse order. How many times have you ever been like, I want to get something to eat? And then you go, what do I want? And you're like picturing tasting something, right? You're like, do I want ribs? Do I want McDonald's? And you're picturing it, right? Are you using your intellect at that point in time, your will? Because I guess that all of us in here, if we could wish ourselves healthy and strong and fit, we would do it. Well, we know how to do it, but it's not the intellect that's saying, what should I eat? It's the body saying, and then everything else is subject to the body. How many of us, just one more example, really want a deeper relationship with the Lord? And we know we could get up in the morning and just spend some quiet time with him. And then your alarm goes off, and if you get this far, you throw the blanket off, and you're like, it's cold. And you put the blanket back on. And then you're like, just 15 more minutes. And then it gets to the point where it's like, okay, now I only have time to shower, get ready to go. I don't have time to pray anymore. You weren't intellectually making that decision, Lord, I do not want to pray. I want to lay in. No, it was your body saying, it's so warm and cozy, and don't you just want to sleep a little bit more? Have we experienced this? Maybe it's just, right? This is what he's saying, is that with the reversal, and am I...
Yeah.
Okay, am I correctly? Okay. So with the reversal of it, we're no longer in control, in charge. We're no longer subject to the spirit, and the body is no longer subject to us. It's ruling us. One last thing is, I recently heard a priest say that the idea of freedom being that I could do whatever I want, he says, is just the most diabolical form of slavery. He's like, you're just now a slave to your passions, to your hungers, to your desires. You're actually more enslaved than ever if you have that idea of freedom. But I don't want to divert from what you're saying, but I just wanted everybody to be tracking and be able to relate that it's not some, thing that you're apart from, that, yeah, no, this is us. You can identify.
As we move now towards Lent, we have a whole lot of practices and restrictions and rules. And so many understand the rules to be like for the sake of the rules, and don't understand the purpose of the rules and the substance under the rules. The body getting put back under control, the fasting rule, disciplining the flesh. If we starve ourselves until it's time to break the fast and then gorge on siami food, that is not the substance of fasting. We have completely missed the meaning of all of this. The substance is for the flesh no longer to have that total control over us. And gluttony at any meal, at any time, when we gorge ourselves, this is the body doing its demanding and controlling over us. When we look to our prayer rules, when we look to all of the structure and rules, these, Bishop Kyrillos, we were talking about this one time, and he said, yes, Orthodox spirituality is found in the cave. And it was like, yes, that's exactly it. Over in the evangelical West in America, if you look at what a typical church service looks like, you drive into the parking lot and there's a greeter there, and he's there to, in the parking lot to help you park, and then there's a greeter to welcome you. There might be donuts and coffee. There's an usher to help direct you to the seats. And then comes the, quote, worship team, and it's a full band with a great singer and great musicians, and they're in front of you, facing you, and you're engaging in this group song with everybody.
Multimedia. It's been a while. There's huge multimedia going on. Yep.
And this is all directed towards you. Then you get to the part where, if it's a really bigger church, you've got a really compelling speaker and the pastor who comes up, and now he's going to deliver this message that's really going to move you and stir you up. Well, that's the form, okay? That's what you're seeing in front of you. But what is the substance? If you look at the origins, even though they're Christian, but you look at the origins of this movement into this expression, you see that it's consumerist America and it's entertainment. If you look on every corner, you'll see a church. And they're competing with the other churches on all the other corners for customers. So we give you a better experience. We give you a more moving experience. It's commercialism. You're the consumer. Everything's directed to you to give you the best experience. And you might, during that music, they start with the upbeat, really exciting, happy song, and then the next song is a little slower, and then the last one is a few words repeated over and over at really slow pace. And you go through this whole realm of experience that the person there believes was an encounter with God. But that's not the substance. The substance is entertainment, the stirring of emotions, and delivering you an experience. If you think you found God in 3 songs, he's not that cheap. I'm sorry. He's just not. It's, again, as Bishop said, it's found in the cave. So with the time and effort that we have in reordering the state of being to be able to find that proper relationship with God, if you look over at the consumerist religion of the West and what it's delivering, the meaning is completely different. And that's because they don't have spirituality. Spirituality is really expensive, and you're not going to get a lot of takers. Unfortunately, or fortunately, in Orthodoxy, we never made a remedial program for the people who really don't want God. They just want to have something moving that talks about God. We never did that. We're like, no, it's God. That's what we offer. Sorry, if you don't want God, okay, but all we offer is God. This is the path, and we offer the tools. And these tools that we are given are both descriptive and prescriptive. So if you notice, I was talking about the unholy communion with the created order. Here, as we get into Lent, anything, and just try anything you cut out of your life, you find out what it means to you once you cut it out. So whether it's fasting from certain foods, whether it's fasting, abstinence through periods of the day, whether it's controlling how much you eat when you do eat, whether it's media, social gatherings, entertainment, television, whatever it is. You may find that this thing wasn't that big of a deal in my life, but you may find something else really was, and it may surprise you. But by cutting all these things out, you now learn of your state. You learn which things are controlling and driving you and tossing you around and owning you. This is what, the beginning part of Lent should be doing, is exposing us to ourselves. This is the substance. This is why we do it. It's to show us our relationship with the created order. And you really should be thinking about all the things in a day that you do. All of them. Whether it's, whether it's shopping, whether it's texting with your friends, and whether it's social media, whatever it is. And start thinking about all those things and say, what if I cut those out and replace them with some spiritual pursuit? Then you find your body and your mind and your soul's reaction to losing them. And then you find out what those things actually meant. But that same tool that's there to expose you to yourself is also used as a prescription to help remedy the problem through strengthening the nous and the will, through pushing back this aspect that's underneath here, being enslaved, pushing it back up towards the top, maybe in small ways and maybe in bigger ways. But this is the substance of our religion. This is the very substance of it. All those practices we have, this is why we do them. We stand through long liturgies. No, our liturgies aren't made to stimulate your emotions and entertain you. The word worship means to do work. It's the work of the people. And in the Hebrew, it was coming from the derivative to plow, like plowing a field. Ours is a deliberate act of work for the greater one. That's what ours is. So when I hear people say, I don't go to liturgy that much because it doesn't do much for me. That tells me you have the whole paradigm wrong. You don't understand the substance of the liturgy. Because the first reason to go to liturgy is to offer worship to God because he's worthy. And if that were the only reason, that's enough. When we first converted, of course, we're outsiders. I didn't have anybody I connected to or anything for a couple of years. But I was there to worship God. So if I didn't have any friends, if I didn't have any social connections, that didn't change anything. That's not what I was there for. I was there to seek God, and he was here, and I found him here. And okay, this is why I'm going to seek God. Another reason to go to liturgy, the substance, is what are we doing through that whole liturgy? We're offering prayers for ourselves, for our families, for our loved ones, for strangers, for the city around us, for the other people in the church. This is the substance of what we're doing. So while you're standing there and you're going, pray for it, and you go, Lord, have mercy. Stop for a minute and understand the substance. We get lost in the form of the Kyrie eleison. But what's the substance? We're saying, Lord, have mercy, give alms, show mercy and compassion and charity towards us with your blessing for whatever thing we're praying for at that moment, for each thing. And you might even take a moment, since you're in the substance now, and they're doing the commemoration of the departed. Pray for some departed people. You're praying for the church. Think of some priests, some clergy you want to pray for, some other members of the church, whatever the case. But get connected, pay attention to the substance underneath. And liturgy isn't entertainment to us. We're not there to get stimulated. This isn't about us. If you look at what it is to be a self, to be an intellectual, self-aware being, to be a self, What is that to be a self? And what are some of the byproducts? You have self-awareness, you have self-gratification, you have needs and desires as a self that you want to feed as a self. What is the most antithetical image you can imagine to being a self, if not Jesus Christ hanging on the cross? Giving up everything, giving up his friends, his clothes, his family, his food, his relationships, because right there, you've lost it all. You're stripped down to nothing. Giving up your health, your feeling of normalcy even, forget about even feeling good. Suffering, anguish, completely giving up everything for the sake of other. That's the antithesis of self. This is the ultimate form of selflessness. And so, if you get back to that as the substance of our faith, you don't walk into liturgy going, well, I didn't really, like the homily, or, wow, the deacons were off a little, and, I got kind of bored. No, this isn't about you. That isn't what our worship is. We are not entertainers. And this isn't a entertainment company competing for your business with the company down the street. And that's why you can't import from Western evangelical religion, oh, we're just going to bring in the guitars and the singers, and we're going to sing these really emotionally moving songs that portray Jesus as my boyfriend and I'm desperately in love, or whatever the case, because that is a form that matches a substance, and the substance is entertainment. It's the gratification of some aspects of our being through emotional experience. But that's not our spirituality. And the most dangerous part of that is people will walk away with that emotional experience thinking they have experienced spirituality. And if you can experience spirituality in 3 songs, why am I fasting? Why am I going through all these things? But you can't. It's not the same. If you've ever been around a truly holy person, you know the difference. You know the difference with that person. It's not like all happy, emotional, yay, yay. No, there's this depth, and they might look completely sober and silent, and you might not even see a smile on their face, but there's a presence there that just radiates from them of a deep spirituality. And this is our substance. So with everything that we do, whether it's, the hyper extreme version of what we do during Lent or all year round, it's really important to understand the substance underneath. Pay attention. What is this doing? What is this supposed to be doing? What is the meaning of this practice and this rule? And if it's not rendering you what it's supposed to, and it's not moving you closer to Christ, and it's not moving you back into your proper state of being, then you need to get together with your priest and say, something's wrong, something's not moving here, something may need to be adjusted. Because we aren't here to be slaves to the form. That's not the point. To be slaves to this fasting rule and this prayer rule, and that's not the point. I mean, understand fasting, when you're, reading about the fathers in the desert, what was fasting from meat to a monk living out in the middle of the desert? They didn't have livestock. You can't graze cattle and chickens on sand, So this was kind of like, if you cut out caviar from your diet, I mean, this was something that was a rare delicacy anyway, to have something as luxurious as that. So understand, it's not about the things themselves. The things are the forms of the substance underneath. And if we're just practicing form, there's a term used in the West where they bash religion. It's not about religion, man. It's about relationship with Jesus, which is absolute nonsense. Religion is the retying back together. Yes, we are religion. We are bound together to these practices and to this church and to Christ. But what they mean to say, which I agree with, is dead religion. Dead religion is the form without the meaning. It's walking into liturgy and robotically saying the things you're supposed to say to the tune, and you don't even know half the time what it is because it's in Coptic, and you're just robotically going through the motions. Or you're robotically starving until noon and then gorging on Siami food. Or whatever else it is that's a practice that you just are going through the motions without the intent and the understanding and without clear direction of what you're doing and what you're working towards. This is where dead religion is the problem. And in the West, they saw it in the Catholic Church, like you will see it in our church or any older church where people had been there for generations. And their answer was, well, let's get them hyped up every week. And we got to change the songs every 3 months because they get stale. And we got to have a new life-changing sermon series every, few weeks. And, it's got to be constant hype and entertainment so we don't fall into that dead religion. And there's a truth that if you're just following through the robotic exercises, yeah, that's a problem. But the answer is not to get rid of the practices and structure. It's to understand the point of the structure and the meaning of the structure and the practices. And then together with your priest to choose which ones to emphasize, which ones to express how much in order to move forward into the substance of what we're doing. And so that's really the biggest point here is the substance. Let's move into understanding and practicing with substance in mind and intention and goal. When I'm up there serving as a subdeacon, I have mindfulness of the censer. What's the goal? It's to burn the incense, right? When I put the coals in the censer. Well, sometimes they used to just put like one coal in there. And then they'd put some scoops on top and it would snuff the coal. Well, I put the coal in. No. That wasn't the point, wasn't to put the coal in. The point was to burn the incense. And so, okay, I'm going to add more coals. I'm going to break them up. I'm going to do it in this way so it burns them better. Recently, it was like, no, now I was using these really hot coals and too many. Now it was burning up the incense too fast. So I'm paying attention. Okay, we got to cut back on these coals and use these coals. What I'm saying is, whatever we do it with intent, do it with thought, do it with meaning. Don't let this become dead religion. It doesn't have to be. And throughout the Old Testament, we saw the same thing. God gave a very formal religion at Sinai. It was like, this day of the year you do this, and this day of the week you do this, and this hour of the day you do. It was so structured, and you eat this and not this, and it was so formal. And the people would fall into practicing the dead form without meaning and substance. And then their hearts would stray from God, and then they'd fall away. God never once said we need to vamp up the form and get it more exciting and engaging. He never said that. He said, no, it's your heart that's the problem that needs to be fixed. The form was fine. Go get your heart straight, and then the form will do what it's supposed to do. Then the form will be meaningful, and it will produce what it's supposed to produce. But first, your heart has got to get straightened out. And this was the pattern throughout the Old Testament. And then Christ comes. And here are the Pharisees. We practice the form. We fast. We give a tenth of everything, including spices. We obey every letter. I don't know if you know, like in Judaism, they have the Sabbath day elevators because pushing the button on the elevator is work. So on the Sabbath, they have elevator stops at every floor, so you don't have to push a button. And you leave the stove burner on low because you can turn it up and down, but you can't turn it on if it's off. Okay, you see what I'm saying? The form. So you got all the Pharisees, and they're saying, we're obeying the form. We've got books on how to obey this in the most technical way of the form. And Christ said, your hearts are totally wrong. Yeah, you got the form right, and probably going a little too far with a whole lot of it, but your hearts aren't right. You see somebody next to you who's hurting, and you don't even care. You just step around him, and you look down on him as though he's something less. Like, no, your heart is totally wrong, because the old man before the Holy Spirit fell was a natural man that was disordered, as we were talking about, and he was given form with meaning and substance to try to steer him back and kind of keep him corralled and on the right track. But ultimately, what he said was, I need to give you a new heart. Your heart's broken. Your heart's the problem. And that's what happened at Pentecost. And that's what he said. This is what was written by the prophet Joel, that I will give you a new heart. I'll take out your flesh of stone, give you a heart of, your heart of stone, give you a heart of flesh. That basically it's like, I need to reorder the structure of your being from the inside. You need to be born again, a new way. And then you need to be given the Spirit to dwell in you and to be a guide. So now you can connect to the meaning and the substance and live this. The form is there as a tool to help us to live this. It's not the thing. It points to the thing, which is God. And it's a tool to help us get to the thing, which is a proper human state, which is worshiping God as a human being is supposed to be and is supposed to worship God. That's the goal. And these are the tools and the vehicles to help get us there. So, understanding them in their proper place and not placing the tools as the thing in themselves. This is correct Orthodox life. It's not just the form, and it's not an abandonment of form. It's form properly applied, wisely selected, and tailored and modified to the person with them and their priest, with a continuous mindfulness of the substance of what we're trying to do and what we're looking for, and a mindfulness of observing ourselves and how are we doing in conforming into that substance through the forms.
Exactly. That's what Thilo has been saying, form and substance. That the form is reading scripture. The substance is to hear God's word, to connect, have a deeper relationship, to hide his word in our heart. So if you have a whole passage you're going to read, you're going to sit down, you're going to read all of the Beatitudes, and you hit the first one, and the Spirit really starts speaking to you, you don't have to keep pushing through, I said I'm going to read all of the Beatitudes today. No. It's going to be a deeper benefit to your soul to sit in that one with the Lord. That's the substance. And as Thilo was saying, on one end, we can become embittered in the fact of like, well, why do I have to read the Bible every single day? Like people back in the beginning of the church didn't even have the Bible. This is, so you can get bitter. Or on the other end, you can get prideful. And you could be like, every single day this week I read the Bible. I've got a whole month. I've read the Bible every day. To what end? What was the substance? You had the form, but you need the substance. And I think
the substance of every single thing in your spiritual life, and the church has given us, goes back to being united together in Christ.
Yes.
With him. That's the substance of everything. So with every single practice, you should be able to connect some dots. Like, okay, I'm fasting. Why? To spend time with him and to reorient myself towards him. And why is the reordering, the disciplining of the flesh and reordering my state of being, why is that uniting me to Christ? Because to be united to Christ is to be formed in his image and to be a partaker of the divine life. Christ is not united to disordered, sinful, broken things. Things have to be reordered, purified, made whole to be united to him. This was what the incarnation was. He came, he joined himself to humanity in becoming man, and in himself and being joined to him, humanity is being healed, reordered, and made perfect and beyond restored to the first state of man, actually taken to the completion of humanity. So it's not just restored back to Adam, it's what Adam should have become finally all the way at the end with his union with God that he never got to. So again, it's take everything back to that substance, being united to Christ, and how does this do that? What is the point that is moving us? And you're talking about Scripture, obtaining the mind of Christ, becoming enlightened, changing your way of thinking. This is making you more like Christ and united to Christ, understanding things through the lens of the Spirit as Christ understands them, thinking and seeing as he does.
And so that's just me inviting you to lean in to whatever it is during Lent and truly be mindful of the substance. And
Mindful.
Yeah.
That's the word, mindful.
And help other people, because there's 3 of you here today, and I pray that this was of value, that you got something, but then, help your friends that when they're like, why do we have to do Lent? And it's so hard, and, maybe help them with the substance a little bit, that most of us, especially as Christians, do really, really in our soul, we want to be united to Christ. We want to be close to him. We love him. It's just that we're weak, and the church in her wisdom has given us these forms for the purpose of the substance, and the substance for the purpose of union with Christ and reordering how
And
we're
it just
supposed to be.
takes a little bit of paying attention and mindfulness, the opposite of which is mindlessness.
Yeah.
To mindlessly obey the rules and the rubrics and the practices and the hymns and the thing is, within a given liturgy, I know we're not going to be mindful of everything we're praying through the whole liturgy. I know that. I struggle, to just pay attention to parts. But it's understanding the goal is to be mindful. And the goal is to be present there in the prayer, not somewhere else in our mind, but there with God, in his house, with the people of God, praying these things. That's the goal. Mm-hmm. So our lack of entertainment and fun is not a failure of the system. It is the system. Mm-hmm. It is the system. This is the context and the place for that will, that mindfulness, that intent, that heart to be formed through struggle. And that's how it happens. You look at any big bodybuilder, and there's the struggle happens in the gym. And there's the pushing against resistance. And then there's the putting in of the right nutrients. and the pushing again against resistance. And it's a very difficult process. It's not a failure of the gym system, it is the system. And in our liturgies and in our practices, the difficulty and the struggle are the system. They're there for a reason, and that's a context in which we can do this struggling in order to grow in our restoration to proper humanity and our closeness, moving toward union with Christ. So it's not to say next time you go to liturgy, every word,
Yeah, you can hang on every word, and it's all going to be deep and meaningful to you.
No, but understand that the goal is to be mindful of everything we're doing in our spiritual lives, paying attention to it. What am I supposed to be doing and what's the meaning? And over time, we increase the amount we're able to pay attention to. And we increase the amount that has meaning in our expression and in our experience. And we continue to grow. And the church has given us that which you probably aren't going to attain in this lifetime, to what this church offers in terms of that growth, which is good. It's like the gym doesn't just have a certain number of weights, and then when you reach that point, that's it. Sorry, you can't press more than that. That's all the plates we have. No, it's endless. I mean, you're not going to attain to all of it, which is good. You don't want something that you can master and be done. It's a continuous growth. But understand, just as we move toward Lent, be mindful of the substance of everything we're doing. Get back to your abuna if it's not moving you in the proper direction. If you're stuck on the form and the substance isn't happening, talk to your abuna. Address that. Because there should be a movement happening in our souls. The substance, be mindful of the substance.
And that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you for tuning in.